I think we may be live. Are we live, Alicia? I think that we are live on Facebook. Hello, everyone. Hi. I'm so happy to be here. It's Thursday. My Thursday morning is usually very simple. I get up, I do a little bit of stretching, and then I start preparing. The reason why I prepare only in the morning is that some of the materials that I'm presenting I've been talking about for many, many years. So it's relatively simple. But at the same time, I'm a perfectionist. So if I took 3 days or 1 week or 2 weeks to prepare this Facebook Live, I would probably take those. So this way I have only a few hours and I just kind of prepare a topic. And today I would like to talk to you about how to reduce use of drugs in veterinary medicine for your dog, but also for yourself. Now, I've been in practice for 30 years. And in the course of the 30 years, I have reduced the use of drugs down to about 15 or 10%, which is huge. Huge not only for the pure fact that medicine and health can be maintained without medication, or at least dramatically reduced amount of drugs, but it's also reducing the toxins and reducing the toxicity of drugs. And today I would like to talk to you about drugs as the last and not the first resort, and how to do that. You know, it would be easy for us to talk about something that we know only in theory, but I know this topic very much in practice, not only from my patients and dogs, but also from my own experience, because I have not been using any medication of any kind for the last at least 20 years plus. And I must say that I don't feel badly. And this is something that I'd like to share with you because I think it's an important part of disease prevention and longevity. And we all know that the one thing that we're striving for is actually to have our dogs live long and happy and healthy life. So I'm going to present some slides today. I don't have too many, don't worry, it's not gonna be dead by PowerPoint. But I just would like to kind of refresh what we talked about last time. And if you missed the last Facebook Live, you can just go back on our Facebook page, Dr. Dobias Natural Healing, which you're on right now, and review some of the previous webinars or Facebook Lives. We'll also have them posted on our website at peterdobias.com. So I'm just going to start sharing. It usually takes me a little bit of moving around here. And just a moment. Sometimes the controls of one window kind of get in the way. Okay, so last time we talked about how to check for heavy metals and how to check what your dog's mineral profile is. It's quite simple. I talked about the fact that the hair seals minerals and toxins in the shaft because the hair shaft grows out of blood and plasma. And those minerals and heavy metals get sealed in the hair. Then we collect it, send it to the lab, and use very fancy equipment that is very accurate to dissolve the hair in plasma and then count the different elements, minerals, and also heavy metals. So that's something that you can do to see where your dog is. We talked a little bit about arsenic and mercury and fish and rice and other food that may contain toxins, but it's almost impossible for us to determine all the toxins that are in our body, in the environment. And I know that it sometimes can be overwhelming. So my goal today is to make it simpler and talk about toxins in general, but also with focus on medication and drugs. So, I repeat this almost every single Facebook Live that there's 37,000 billion chemical reactions happening in the body every second. And that's a huge number. It's such a huge number that I can't even imagine it happening in million years. And it happens in a second in the body. So it's a really wild idea that so much is going on and we can still sit down or sleep and do absolutely nothing about it. It's still happening. But when there are toxins affecting these chemical reactions, that's when disease happens. That's when the body gets out of balance. Toxins are like the illegal cars that park in the parking spots that are reserved for the good elements and minerals and the good substances that our body needs to function. So ideally, we should just basically do all we can to prevent these illegally parked toxins on the cell, on the receptors in the body. Let's move away for a moment to a different area. I love Ed Sheeran. And last year when I visited my mom in the Czech Republic, we went to a concert of Ed Sheeran. And I've seen two of his concerts. One of them was about 10 years ago, and now the first one 10 years ago was in a very small park in West Vancouver, which is a suburb of Vancouver. And Ed Sheeran was playing for a very small audience. Well, this time around, 10 years later, there were 80,000 people in the field, and they had two concerts in 2 days in Prague. And it was fantastic. He's basically the only person on the stage, and he can create such a beautiful music. And he presets certain tones, and then he adds more and more and more until it's a song. But imagine that suddenly there's an audio problem, or someone else hacks his microphones and will play very, very disturbing sound, whether it's screechy noise or dog barking or whatever else it is. Suddenly the concert is totally different. It's not a pleasant experience at all. And the song, the beautiful sound, the healthy song is disturbed. And toxins are like that. They basically disturb the beautiful song or the harmony of the body. They barge in and they disturb the biochemical reactions, and out of a beautiful harmony and symphony, there is a mess. So remember that every time you use something that is artificial, remember that every time you use chemical product, cleaning product, or even medication, because medication is not natural to the body. And because it's not natural, it is like the disturbance at the concert. It is like the illegally parked car in the parking lot that is reserved for good nutrients and healthy elements. If you remember that, obviously the natural thing is, oh my God, this is so overwhelming and confusing, because doctors are telling me one thing and vets are telling me one thing, and now Peter comes with the idea that toxins and drugs are not that great. Well, there is a solution. I'm not saying that you should never use medication and toxins. What I'm saying is that you should minimize their use the way I've done it in my practice in the course of the last 30 years. And I swear to God, it's really lovely to see that we don't need these chemical substances that come with a whole bunch of side effects, which in fact are effects. They're just labeled differently. So, it's good to see the drugs as the last resort. And I'm actually looking on my iPad here because I want to make sure that I don't forget anything that I prepared talking about. Drugs are a foreign substance. They're not natural to the body. And no matter how good they are, and sometimes they can be life-saving, they're still foreign substances. And there's always a payback or some sort of clause coming with drugs, the side effects, or the challenges. The body still has to detox them. The body still has to treat them as foreign substances. And there are several different types of drugs. There are some drugs that can be acting as crutches, meaning if you have a dog that has hypothyroidism, low thyroid gland, you sometimes may need to choose to supplement the hormone because the body's metabolism otherwise doesn't function properly. Or if there's lack of insulin production, obviously our ideal situation would be to restore the insulin production. And sometimes it can happen through diet. But at other times, you're not going to change your dog's life or take chances on your dog's life and not giving insulin. So that is a crutch, right? Insulin is a crutch. Thyroid hormone is a crutch. There are some other drugs that I don't like at all and almost never use. And there are the anti-inflammatory drugs, painkillers. In some situations they can be helpful, but often they're not as helpful in the long run. Prednisone as well, steroid hormones, can suppress the body's reactions. And when the body signals and tells you there's something wrong, when there's pain, inflammation in the acute state, those are signals that there's something wrong. And it's part of the healing for the body to signal, hell, there is something wrong. Your knee hurts, don't move, rest, okay? But if we give our dogs an anti-inflammatory medication, it actually blocks the healing response, it blocks the pain, but the problem still goes on, the weakness. It is not a situation that is much different from your house being on fire and you taking sleeping pills as opposed to choosing the fire department and calling 911. And I know this may be, for some of you, really hard to grasp because people deal with chronic conditions. And you may be dealing with chronic condition where the pain is so unbearable that it is hard to handle without the pain control and medication. And I understand that. And I don't want you to pour ashes on your head that you're taking the medication. I just want you to understand that there are other ways to deal with problems. It's hard for me to actually share my experience sometimes because I don't want it to come across as saying, I know it all and I'm doing well, and some people are not. That's not what I want to say. I have my challenges. Last year ago, I put my back out because I was lifting my mom in the hospital all the time, and suddenly I couldn't move. But I did not take one simple pill, medication, painkiller. I rested, I stretched, I used turmeric, Zyflamen, which is a turmeric-based product as well, omega oils. I really did all the other stuff, physiotherapy, chiropractor, and I got better. And my back is back to normal. But I do see so many people and so many dogs that actually are put on drugs, and they are actually basically putting their defenses to sleep, and then they have long-term chronic condition. And that is what we need to prevent. And this is what we need to actually deal with. So drugs actually, in a way, are foreign to the body. Second, they suppress the protective response and the healing response. And they sometimes cover up the symptoms without healing the problem. And that is not medicine to me. That is patching up. If you have a leaky roof and you put a bucket under the leaky roof, yeah, you may actually prevent more damage in your house, but you're not really fixing the roof. And this is how our medicine these days works. And that's serious. That's problematic. I'm gonna go back to my notes. Sorry about that. I just it keeps closing on me here. Drugs are never 100% harmless. There's always payoff or payback for drugs. And the question that I often ask is, can we really trust safety testing? The problem is that safety testing is done for a very short time. There's also very high complexity of all the biochemical reactions in the body and interaction of drugs. And in the long run, we don't really know whether drugs cause certain side effects or not. Like, it's really hard to have, some people, older people especially, are on 5 or 10 drugs. There is no person in the world that can reliably say that these drugs will not interact with each other. We just simply don't know. That's why I'm saying the best way to go is to reduce the amount of drugs that we need and our dogs need to a minimum. And most conditions can be treated without drugs. So this is a process. I'm not necessarily saying that we'll be able to make this change and create this change overnight, But it is super important to keep it in mind because that's the start of the change that we need in medical system. Drug companies, they conduct research, and we know that sometimes it's quite self-serving. We know that there's some medication that has been considered safe, and then later on it's not. I remember in the late 90s, I gave an anti-inflammatory injection to a very healthy dog that just hurt his leg. He was limping a little bit. So I gave the injection, and 2 hours later, the dog came back with throwing pools of blood up. And it was frightening. It was one of the scariest sights that I've seen. A healthy dog 2 hours ago, I give something to heal it, and here we go, we have pools of blood in the office. I called the drug rep and I asked them whether these side effects are possible. They said absolutely not. It only took 1 more year when basically there was a big scandal around this particular drug. I have a rule that I don't really comment on the names of particular medication, so I can't really disclose it. But pretty much any NSAID, any non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, the ones that you get in medical veterinary practices all the time for surgery or for pain or for lameness, those cause these symptoms. They cause also liver disease and kidney disease. And because I know about it, I really can't not tell you about it. It just doesn't feel right. I can be diplomatic. I can be saying, this is not why I shouldn't be stirring the pot or scaring you off, but this is really serious. And this is why I created the health and longevity course and other courses on our website. This is why I write, because I know that your dog is your everything in many cases, and if not everything, a lot. And I know what it is to lose them prematurely. And I know what it feels like when we blame ourselves because we didn't know any better, blame ourselves for our decisions. So this knowledge will hopefully empower you. So drugs should be put as a last resort. This is a joke that I found on stock image site. This guy is saying, I have a headache, work has been demanding, and I got a parking ticket. And the doctor says, Prozac, 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 right? But how about if we find solutions in learning to grow as opposed to taking the sleeping pill at the time of crisis in a way, or Prozac at the time of emotional crisis? Because it numbs us out. It puts the defenses asleep, but it does not solve the problem. It doesn't solve us being overworked or depressed or getting a parking ticket, right? Maybe getting a parking ticket can be prevented, but not parking illegally. How about that? Or paying attention to the timer. So medicine is like that too. Testing, again, DDT was launched some time ago. I remember as a kid in the 60s, my sister and I, we used to play in an attic of our cottage where there were skins powdered by DDT. When I remember that, I go like, oh my God, it's crazy. And now we know that it is not safe. So we cannot rely on testing. We also know the story of thalidomide, which has caused newborns lacking extremities and missing fingers and arms and legs. Really scary stuff. And I don't necessarily want to paint completely bleak picture of medicine and what's happening, but it is always better to go with caution and use only what you need. So the first solution here is to say no to drugs whenever possible. And it's going to be tough because you're going to see your veterinarian, your human practitioner, and they have been taught to prescribe drugs. Just recently, my friend who turned 70 had an open heart surgery. It was very difficult on his wife, hard on his wife and him. And I could see them really being challenged by this whole emergency. And obviously it's stressful. It's stressful for them and it's stressful for their friends and family because we don't want to see people in discomfort. I called them 2 days later after the surgery and I checked with the wife. I said, is your husband taking omega oils? Is he on minerals? Like, does he take many vitamins? And she replied and said, he doesn't really believe in any of that. And I go, okay, that's fine. But has the doctor talked to you about giving any essential nutrients that are important for healing? And she said, not really. So I don't really know how many tens of thousands or maybe even hundreds of thousands this surgery cost. And then the doctor does not even mention nutrition. And I don't really know what drugs my friend is on, because I've been trying to kind of stay low key and not disturb them in the process of healing, especially now in COVID-19 era. But it was just so disturbing to see that our doctors have not been trained in essential basic nutritional therapy. It's crazy. And good nutrients also push out toxins. So that's another thing. If we have the good nutrients in the parking spots in our body and our cells, the toxins cannot park there, right? Minerals are really known to compete with heavy metals, good minerals. So that's really easy. The 4 essential groups are minerals, omegas, vitamins, and probiotics. And if you use those, you not only give your dog the nutrients that it needs, but you also are pushing out toxins. And the last solution is a detox. Obviously, living in a clean environment, making sure that that your dog eats good food, so not feeding kibble, and reducing medication and all that is helpful. But we also know that as time progresses and our dogs age, that they lose their metabolic capacity. The DNA repair reduces by 50%. By the age of 50 in humans. And that's how aging happens. And in dogs, it's no different. DNA repair is essential for preventing not only wrinkles and hair loss, but also preventing damage to tissue and preventing cancer and all that. And we will be doing a lot of work on that level in the months and years to come, because I'm really excited about that. I have been taking liver cleanse every 6 months, and I've been giving Pax liver cleanse, liver tune every 6 months, because the liver and the body does need a little boost, especially because there are so many toxins in the environment. And it is hard to measure them all, and it is hard to actually even get an idea how much we've been exposed to. And it is also unreasonable for us to have 100% free, toxin-free life. But if we are mindful, if we know a few simple principles, we can really keep our dogs healthier and extend their life. And I've seen that over and over and over. And we've seen that from in the newsletter, in the email that we get, and testimonials, and it makes me really happy. So next time we'll be talking about detox a little bit more, and we'll talk about some of the herbs and ingredients that you could use, and what to use instead of drugs, let's say anti-inflammatories and other medication. So that's all for today. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'll stop sharing now, and I'll get back on. Alicia, I'm sure that you'll let me know if there are any questions.
Thanks for asking. And yes, we do have a couple of questions from some dog lovers that are watching the Facebook Live. The first one is from Lily. Lily asks, what is the natural approach to keeping dogs' joints healthy? And this is to avoid mobility issues as they age, as drugs seem to be prescribed very regularly to combat these issues with mobility for senior dogs especially.
That's a really good question. Thank you for asking. Mobility is one of the most difficult topics, at least for me, because while we have solved natural skin healing and detox, or dealing with certain condition, mobility and supplements for mobility are, in my mind, really complex and complicated. When it comes to drugs and using the anti-inflammatories, as I said, they reduce healing pathways. They reduce the natural protective mechanism of the body. So that's not an answer. I can tell you what I have been doing now. I also can tell you that we have a course on mobility on our website. So you're more than welcome to use it. It's free. There are a few things in the arsenal that you have. The number one is mindful exercise and healthy nutrition. I've noticed with the dogs that are on natural diet and the essential supplements that they grow strong. I see the difference between Pax and Sky. Sky lived until he was 16, which is a nice age, but I could see in the last few years that he was really, his mobility wasn't as good as I wanted to, even though I had a few things that I did and they helped. So the first thing is nutrition. Definitely don't have your dog on kibble because it is problematic on the level of toxins and on the level of metabolic efficiency. The body cannot function on dehydrated canned food that came from China. It's impossible. That the ingredient quality is just not good. As I said, there's a difference between Pax and Sky. Pax are Korean dog. How they grew. Pax is so much stronger and so much more robust than Sky was, because Sky was not on the essentials until he was 9, because I didn't really make them or formulate them when he was born and during the first 9 years. So that's the first thing. Second, mindful exercise. I have a few blogs on what not to do. I see people constantly using these ball chuckers, which make dogs run for 30 minutes, 45 minutes in the park, on the beach, like crazy. And dogs in nature, they wouldn't be chasing 30 bunnies or rabbits in half an hour or 60. Dogs are not designed for this constant sprinting. And the same way tennis elbow happens when we overuse our elbow, when we play with one hand all the time and are obsessed with tennis. Our dogs get injuries from repetitive exercise, whether it's ball retrieving, frisbee retrieving, or even swimming that is too excessive. Like, it has to be just varied exercise that we implement. And we do have a few blogs on our website, and I'm sure that Christina and Alicia will post a few links. So the next thing is how to maintain our dogs during the course of their life, whether they're young or not. Massage is super important, and you can do that, daily. Combing, stimulating the skin and blood circulation, super important. And then it goes to more specific and more professional services like physical therapy, chiropractics, acupuncture. All those are to be used not when shit hits the fan, pardon my language. They should be used as preventive measures. And I've been using them for Pax. Pax goes to a chiropractor once in a while. My partner is a physical therapist, so we do physical. I massage him, I comb him, I check his spine, I make sure that there's no inflammatory responses. Sometimes when Pax overdoes it, I can see him scratching in a certain area of his back or body, and I know that he has a tight muscle. And so I massage that area where he scratches. And there's a lot of information on that in the mobility course. So I recommend you taking it. The next phase, when you have your dog going through discomfort and you start seeing some arthritic changes, again, the essentials are super important. Upping omega-3s because they're known to be anti-inflammatory. Using turmeric-based products or turmeric in the food, which is, again, anti-inflammatory. Glucosamine, chondroitin, I think that they have a moderate effect on mobility, and it's good to use. And also Perna mussel, which is green leaf mussel, New Zealand green leaf mussel is good for mobility as well. So those are the measures that we have now. What I've been looking at is to create a mobility product. I know that I've been recommending it or kind of promising it for some time. And the reason why I haven't launched it, I want it to be as good as the rest of the products. And when I feel that I still have to do some work on the level of the formula and what to, how to create it, so I don't just repeat the same old, which I think happens in the market. One person makes a formula, then the other person copies it, and the third person copies it. I don't really like to work like that because I think that it's not the best way to work. You know, when it comes to, let's say, our vitamins, we have used fermentation process, and I think that we are the only company on the market that actually use fermented vitamins. We have organ support in the vitamins as well, because I know what conditions dogs suffer from in the course of their lives. So I try to support these organs as well. We certified organic products, so it takes time for us to develop a product for mobility, and I find it extremely challenging, but also very exciting. I will be doing some further trials with certain substances that I've been researching this summer. I think that I'm kind of done with testing and trials on humans, which is me and my family. And now we're going to be moving into testing and trial on dogs in Vancouver. We have a link to people who live actually in the area to register for mobility and senior care program and research. It will be safe, but we will be using certain substances that are not used for mobility yet. So if you're interested in at least learning, please let me know. So that's all. That was a long answer, but it was a complicated question. So I just wanted to make sure that I'll answer it as well as I can.
Thanks so much. The next question that we have is from Beverly. Beverly said that she has a couple of dogs that have breathing problems, and she thinks the breathing problems are associated from the vaccinations that they got. Is there anything that you'd like to, I guess, expand on that from what you've seen in practice?
You know, I understand it must be really distressing when you see that your dogs have breathing problems. I don't really know what your dog's age is. The most common reason for breathing problem is that dogs, as they age, lose their lung capacity. Their lungs get a little scarred up and fibrotic, what we call. And it's a normal change in older dogs. They lose their capacity to exchange oxygen and also exchange heat. And dogs use panting as heat regulatory kind of function. So if you see that your dog is panting, try to keep it cool, number one. Number two, make sure that you go and see your veterinarian, make sure that there is no physical condition or growth or something like that. But generally, vaccines are kind of tricky topic. Either people blame them for everything or they say that they're good for everything. And I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. I would say that the connection of vaccines and breathing issues is, at least the direct connection is really rare, would be rare. You know, if you give your dog a kennel cough vaccine and it starts coughing or having some sort of side effect of the vaccine, that would be clear. I would say I'd be aiming more for the regulation and heat regulation, but also there are some other areas in the body or on the body that you can address. Dogs that have tight interscapular segment of their spine between the shoulder blades sometimes have respiratory issues because that area regulates or is connected closely to the lungs. So massages in between the shoulder blades and around the shoulders is actually a good way to go. I would need more information about your dogs to give you a specific advice. But to answer the question about vaccines, I think it's unlikely that it's related to vaccines, even though I'm all for minimizing vaccines and I'm not really for vaccinating older dogs because I never seen dogs suffering from the puppy diseases like parvo and distemper in the older age. It really is not necessary. And they also maintain antibodies for a lifetime, and you can get them measured in your veterinarian's office by taking a blood sample. So that's all.
Great, thank you. The next question is maybe related to cleanse and toxins being pushed out of the body, but maybe not. What do you feel, or what are your thoughts to do with shedding? If a dog is shedding, I mean, it's springtime right now in North America, could that be to do with a dog pushing out toxins, or is it just part and parcel? The dog is a Cocker Spaniel.
I love today's questions, honestly. Partial shedding is normal in dogs, but I've noticed one thing. you know, the kind of spring clump shedding that happens in huge kind of nasty clumps of matted hair. I think it's a sign of nutritional deficiency. I have not had one single dog that would do that. And I have not seen dogs having these crazy shedding periods when their nutritional status was good. They go more evenly. They don't look like matted carpets, right? So or they don't lose tons of hair. It is true that toxins can cause excessive shedding as well, or the body starts throwing off the toxins through the surface. It's the body's natural way to protect its organs, to push everything they can to the surface. You know, when you eat a bad food or something that doesn't fit us, we get rashes, right? That's the body's way of detoxing as well. I know that when I misbehave with food, I would have rashes. Or when I'm stressed, or when I know that I was exposed to, let's say, toxic paint or something like that, I would start having, you know, pimples in certain area of my face. And I'm sure that in Chinese medicine, there's an explanation or organ it relates to and all that. Going back, excessive shedding can be a sign of nutritional deficiency, toxicity, dietary imbalance. I would probably start with running hair Q test and see where your dog is at, and then adding the essentials, because that will kind of give you an idea whether the shedding was normal or not. But I think that from what you're describing, it may be a little abnormal.
Thank you. I feel that what you've just touched on will probably resonate quite a bit. Lily said that the dog that she's speaking of is actually a rescue dog, so she doesn't know necessarily much about the past. So hopefully that's helpful. The next question, you did touch on panting at night, if a dog is excessively panting. What about if the dog seems to be excessively slobbering overnight with, she mentions a brown stain from the mouth that she finds on the pillow. I love that this dog has a pillow.
Excessive slobbering, so many different possibilities. There can be nausea. It can be also dental conditions, especially when there are brown stains. Brown stains would happen when there's a little bit of blood in the gums, or when there's some sort of oral infection. It can also be toxicity. You know, I have people telling me often that when they put their dogs on different diet and balance their diet with supplements, that their staining, hair staining actually reduces. So that's something that you may want to look at as well. But it definitely is not normal. I would suggest you to see your veterinarian and do an exam, oral exam, make sure that your dog doesn't have an abscess or fractured tooth or some sort of gum disease or growth. It can be all sorts of different things. And I highly recommend you getting a professional exam. That would be the best way to go. And I hope it's nothing serious. I know how distressing it is to see our dogs going through any difficult, challenging time. So just have that looked at. That would be the best way to go.
Mm-hmm. Great. The next question comes from Francine. She says that she has a 3-year-old rescue who got encephalitis. She's been treating her for almost a year with anti-seizure medication and steroids. The question is, do dogs ever really recover from this condition? So this is a 3-year-old dog.
You know, seizures are difficult condition because there can be several things going on. Seizures sometimes happens as a result of heavy metal buildup. I've seen quite a few dogs having high mercury levels when they're fed fish. They could start seizuring. Sometimes it can be neck imbalance, neck injury that can actually lead to seizures, because the neck is very much a governing part of the body, and it can affect the brain function and flow of blood to the brain, and it can actually affect seizure. So I would say no collars for sure. Get perfected harness or similar. Make sure that there is no impact on the neck. Go and see a physical therapist and chiropractor. The third possibility is that there is something internal happening, a growth or something else, and that would be obviously much more serious. I do think that dogs that have seizure can sometimes improve and recover, but some don't, and it's really distressing for people to see their dog seizuring. Some people use CBD for regulation of seizures, but I would basically implement what we call healing cycle. When, as the first line of defense, I would detox, I would provide the essential nutrients, I would probably give double of the omega-3 doses, I would possibly use CBD oil, and I would check hair for toxins and heavy metals, and I would try to minimize medication. I would also do, obviously, liver detox. Liver is another organ that has a lot to do with brain function. You know, when people say, "Oh, he's so grumpy," or that this one is a grumpy old man. The grumpy old men actually get grumpy for numerous reasons, but the way I see it is very simple. Their metabolic capacity reduces, and their brain doesn't function as well. So there's the endorphins and certain feel-good enzymes or hormones don't produce in such readily amount. And also older people have toxicity, which affects the liver. And when the liver is activated and overactive, that makes people angry and grumpy. So there are some, if you have a grumpy husband or wife, make sure that they do a detox and eat better and get essential supplements on board and look after their diet. Makes a huge difference. I see that definitely.
Excellent advice. The next question comes from Lynn. She said that her dog has been coughing a lot, but only at nighttime. Do you have any ideas as to what might cause that?
Again, I talked about lungs and addressing the interscapular space, doing an exam. Cough can be, cough is a very non-specific symptom. We had some people repairing our roof about 3 days ago. They were just finishing up. And one of them started coughing, and I immediately go, oh my God, there's, he may be infected with COVID. In dogs, it can be infectious as well. It can be kennel cough. It can be nutritional cough, meaning that diet can affect how the lungs function as well. If you give your dog dairy or kibble or grain, that can affect it. It can be something more serious. It can be asthma. It can be a potential growth. Like if I have a dog that coughs on an ongoing basis, I do two things. I examine their lung point, which is right in between the shoulder blades. So you can actually run your thumbs along the spine in between the shoulder blade and press quite hard. If your dog actually responds really strongly, that may mean that there's something going on, something more serious going with lungs. In the past, in practice, I would examine dogs' spine, and if I see severe reactivity, I send them directly for x-rays. I do blood work, and I make sure that there is nothing bad hiding on us. Cough is non-specific. It requires more examination.
Thank you. The next question comes from Piney. Does stomach rumbling indicate an issue? Worried about pancreatitis, but blood test and SNAP CPL came back okay. They also did a fecal exam and there were no parasites present. Could it be acid reflux that causes stomach rumbling?
Number one, stomach rumbling can be hunger.
Outside of hunger, I guess.
I will have that soon. Because I haven't had breakfast this morning. I do intermittent fasting. So that can be one thing. Fasting can cause stomach rumbling, but assuming that you don't fast your dog beyond 24 hours, it can be stomach dysfunction. It can be acid reflux, and the acid actually backing up into the esophagus. But I would, what I would actually, which direction I would go at this point? I would actually check the thoracic lumbar junction, which is behind the last strip, the spinal segment right behind the last strip, and see whether your dog is congested, injured, or sensitive or inflamed in that area, because that spot is actually reflective of stomach function and pancreatic function. And if it's congested, the stomach may be a little weakened. So that's one area. Second, I would Just do you want, how old is your dog? I would really like to know. If you can reply on Facebook again, but I'll continue on in answering the question so I don't just wait. I would add apple cider vinegar, just a simple apple cider vinegar. Small dog, half a teaspoon, medium dog, 1 to 1.5 teaspoon, and large dog, maybe even 2 teaspoons of apple cider vinegar in the food. That will improve the acidity actually in the digestion of the stomach. And, assuming that this is not gastric reflux. And even if it is, for some reason, apple cider vinegar is very therapeutic and it does adjust digestion in a positive way. I would also consider digestive enzymes, especially if your dog is middle to older age, because it can help. As I said, in the past, I was very much against supplementing any digestive enzymes because I thought the body is to produce it on its own. And if we supplement them, it's going to be like giving the dog a crutch on the digestive level. And I didn't like it. But then I obviously did more thinking and reading and studying, realizing that the body naturally decreases with production of digestive enzymes. And they're actually good for us, especially if we want to get all the nutrients from the food. I confess I'm 56 and I do take digestive enzymes now, and I didn't used to. The trigger was actually some time ago when one of our managers, Leah, came back with her grandma celebrating 103 or something like that, and I asked what the secret was, what her grandma's secret was, and she said, well, she takes digestive enzymes and Baileys every day. So I don't drink Baileys every day. I actually don't drink Baileys very often because it's made of cream and I try not to do dairy, but I do take digestive enzymes. And thanks, Leah, grandma.
And we did hear back. Piney said that the dog is 5.5 years old and currently taking digestive enzymes and probiotics.
Okay, I would add apple cider vinegar, and I would really talk to a chiropractor or physiotherapist and see whether there's any congestion in that area. Really, sometimes it is just an injury in that area, and you release it. You actually even, some people just start massaging the area behind the last rib. That's all they do, and suddenly the rumbling disappears. It's really fantastic how simple the body is sometimes.
Amazing, thank you. The next question comes from Jackie. Jackie has purchased Livertune for her dog Maisie, who is a Labrador, and she's also purchased it for herself. She's planning on doing a liver cleanse with Maisie, and her question is there a specific time or schedule that she should plan to get started on that? How often and for how long?
I do liver cleanse with Pax every 6 months, which tells me that he's actually due because he just turned 1 year. So he's due for another 3 to 4 weeks of liver cleansing. I usually do a month. So that's one thing. What was the other question, part of the question, Alicia? So how often, how frequent,
and
how long?
How often, how long, and if there's a better time, I guess, in terms of scheduling a cleanse. A lot of people think of spring and fall to do cleanses, but does it really matter in the big scheme of things?
The spring and fall is just kind of a easy way to remember spring and fall, right? But otherwise, you can pretty much do it anytime. Mark it in the calendar and you can do it anytime. It's better to do a cleanse than not do it at all. And I've seen, my friend just actually 3 days ago, she texted me. She's an animal chiropractor, and her dog has had elevated liver enzymes for 2 or 3 years. And we've been using the previous product that we used to use, Liftone, before I came up with Livertune. And we were having a hard time to slice the liver enzymes down with Liftone. And she just texted me 3 days ago and said, hey, guess what? The liver enzymes are almost back to normal, and they were really high. So that really made me happy. I don't really know what else to say that makes me happy when I actually see true results, and that's why I sometimes suggest don't listen to me what I say about the products. Just go and read the stories on our website, what people say, because sometimes I sit down and read them to just kind of feel good, and I never expected they will be so profound, because I actually was taught that medicine is complicated and it's never simple. And I'm learning that I can actually teach you a few simple steps in the healing process, and it makes a difference that I never imagined it would make. And it makes me reduce, or allows me to reduce the amount of drugs, allows us to reduce the amount of drugs, you and I, by huge amounts. I know who doesn't like it. Drug companies don't like it, because imagine if their profits suddenly drop by 80, 90%. That would not be cool. So they're not necessarily interested in inventing simple, inexpensive products that cure disease. They want us to be on the medication, or dogs on the medication for a lifetime, maintain, cover up the symptoms, but not necessarily curing the disease. If I have allergies, I can treat them by diet, omega oils, reducing dairy, some other food ingredients, or I can be taking antihistamines or using puffer for a lifetime, right? What is more beneficial for drug companies? The biggest challenge, I think, in our medicine is that it needs to be rebuilt. Research has to be done by independent bodies who are not vested, who don't have vested interest in developing expensive drugs. I think that lobbying in medicine and in drug approvals and creating laws should be outlawed, because we now have laws in Canada, for example, that make it very difficult for natural products to be approved, because it costs huge amount of money and time. And small companies who come up with a new product don't have the money that the drug companies have. But going back, I think that the good news is that we can educate ourselves and we can reduce the use of drugs. We basically can support any company in the world and make it go down and under if we don't like how it conducts itself. Because we are the ones, the consumers, who do take or buy their products. The only problem in medicine is that we often blindly trust veterinarians and doctors. I'm a veterinarian. I will never say that you should blindly trust me. But if it sounds right, what I'm sharing with you, then I urge you to, or recommend or suggest that you try it, because it's fun to see the results. And it's about our dogs that we love.
Absolutely. We have a couple more questions to wrap up. They are diet related, but diet's the foundation of health. One question is about mushrooms. What are your thoughts on using mushroom broth and mushrooms in general, be it shiitake, fresh oyster mushrooms, portobello? Do you feed them to packs? And if so, cooked, uncooked, how often?
I do have mushrooms as one of the ingredients on our recipe maker, the natural diet recipe maker. Mushrooms are known to be therapeutic. They support the immune system function. They are also good in preventing and treating cancer. I would say just the regular edible mushrooms could be added in your dog's food. Raw versus cooked. You caught me by surprise a little bit, because I don't really know whether there's any contraindication of raw mushrooms to dogs. I sometimes feed them and we eat them as well. I'm not aware of any contraindication, but we will check for you and we will let you know, because that's something that I don't know. And was there any other part of the question?
No, the second question is also to do with food. It is regarding eggs, which is a question we get quite often. People ask about, is it better to feed raw or cooked eggs? If cooked, does it matter if they're scrambled or boiled? And how often should they be fed? Once or twice a week versus daily? What are your thoughts on feeding eggs?
I think with eggs, the middle road with regards to frequency is the best way to go. A few times a week is probably okay. Dogs don't have issues with cholesterol, so there is no issue. And even for people, they discovered that actually cholesterol levels are more affected by overall diet quality than just eggs. And some people eat eggs every day and they're fine. When it comes to raw versus cooked, raw eggs, the egg whites actually contain and they inhibit protein digestion. or egg whites inhibit protein digestion. So it's super important to remember that if you give raw eggs, that it may inhibit digestion of meat and the food in general, especially if you give a lot of eggs. That's why we recommend or we prefer eggs being cooked as opposed to raw. But going back to nature, dogs would obviously eat eggs here and there, but I suspect that they would not be as much of a mainstay of their diet as opposed to bones and meat and organs and plants. So they would be occasional diet source. Cooked are better. I usually cook eggs for packs. Once in a while, I would give them raw. But again, you know, if I see that my dog has digestive issues, especially, or diarrhea or some sort of stomach dysfunction, then I would definitely not be feeding raw eggs.
Great, thank you. And actually, there's one more question, if we can touch on that before we wrap up. The last question I'll pose is from Lada. She said, is there a protocol for young dogs when it comes to vet visits? Her reasoning for her question is she's trying not to see a vet too often, but rather to do some tests herself, i.e. heartworm tests. But should I do other blood work tests or anything else? I'm assuming this is a very young pup. She doesn't actually give the age. But what is your preference when it comes to how often pups or older dogs should see a vet?
It's such a good question. I'm going to start with adult dogs and then senior dogs. I would say the dogs that are middle-aged should be seeing a vet probably once to twice a year. And I would say twice a year is better if your vet really knows about spinal misalignments, about how to recognize injuries and some of the subtle changes in the body that can affect his or her quality of life and health. Senior dogs, I would say every 3 to 6 months. So adult dogs every 6 to 12, senior dogs every 3 to 6. But definitely doing blood work at least once a year for middle-aged and older dogs. But in older dogs, I would say every 6 months is better. I'm gonna repeat this one more time and I'm done with this, so it's clear. And when it comes to puppies, the first visit at the veterinary office, I would make at 12 weeks. I usually do not recommend vaccination at that point, but I recommend antibody tests to see where the protection against parvo and distemper, the most common diseases, are. If the antibodies comes back positive or the test comes back positive or good, then I would do another test and another recheck at the age of 5 months. And at that point, you have to decide whether your dog is at risk of rabies or not and what the situation around you, around your area is. And I would do another titer test and see if the antibody is present. Then, believe it or not, I would still not vaccinate against distemper and parvo, and I would check the test again in 1 year. So that gives you the schedule, the minimal schedule for veterinary visit: 12 weeks, 5 months, 1 year. The problem is that most veterinarians will try to convince you that you have to give 3 boosters to your dog at the age of 8 or 12 months, and then every 4 weeks thereafter for three times. That it will expose your puppy to 15 plus or maybe even 20 plus antigens or diseases in that time, because the body doesn't know a difference between the vaccine and the disease. And disease usually comes in one. It's not like we have like COVID-19 and then flu and then something else coming at the same time. It usually happens at once, like just one virus at the time. So this is a very unnatural situation that can create the immune system overreacting. It can cause allergies. It can start, your dog can start showing symptoms of the disease that the vaccine should prevent as a side effect. Kennel cough is a good example, or Lyme disease, terrible vaccine that has caused many dogs having arthritis. I've seen that in my practice. There is no 1-year-old dog that should have arthritic spine, and I've seen that after Lyme vaccine. So again, the problem is vets are taught that we should be using boosters. I have a vaccine protocol, natural approach to vaccination in puppies on my website. We'll post that blog. It's complicated. I would say find a vet who is open to, or at least is okay with you making decisions for your dog. Your dog doesn't own, is not the guardian for your dog. It's you. Your dog is not your boss. It's not the police. You can just say, this is what I've decided. This is how I want to do it. And worst case scenario, he'll say, I don't want to see you anymore. Say, okay, fine, I'll find another vet. Listen, there are so many vets around, and some of them will be more open than others. Some of them will be mature enough, knowing and understanding that you are the boss. They're the service provider. I'm your service provider here. Or if I talk to my team, I'm my team service provider, and the team is my service provider to accomplish the mission of giving you the information and creating courses and products and all that. We are at each other's service, and the vets are no bosses. Like, when I go back to Europe and when I see the arrogance of the doctors in the Czech Republic where I'm from, it makes me really sad, because they don't want to talk to the patients. They act like they know everything. And I know it comes out of insecurity, but I think that it's the wrong direction that medicine has gone. I find North American veterinarians and doctors are much more open to communication and much more humble, or at least they are not afraid to say that they don't know as much. The kind of white gown and stethoscope and all that stuff just kind of adds to the insecurity, right? Like, well, it doesn't add to the insecurity, but it shows that people have to kind of put the show on to feel actually safe and secure to say, I don't know, or okay, you're in charge of your dog. I'm going to respect your wishes. I may not agree with you, but I will respect them. So just to repeat about the number of visits, puppies, 12 weeks, 5 months, 1 year minimum. Make sure that your dog is dewormed, your puppy is dewormed, that fecal checks are done as well. I would do at least 2 or 3 in the first 6 months, just to make sure that your dog is free of parasites. Adult dogs, one to twice a year, and senior dogs 2 to 4 times a year. That would be my minimum. And I would not be doing boosters in adult and older dogs. And again, go to the vaccine recommendations. And if anyone wants to challenge me, and if my colleagues want to challenge me, I will say I respect their wishes. But I know that I've been using these protocols for at least 20 past years, and I have not had any increase in infectious disease. In fact, I've not seen any infectious disease that we vaccinated against in the last 20 years, with the exception of homeless, abandoned puppy litter somewhere on a reserve. They would not be getting good food and they would be exposed to parvovirus. Or a dog that would not be taken out to socialize, would not be vaccinated, would be full of worms and parasites, and then it would be taken out to see other dogs at the age of 5 months. Those are the dangerous situations. But vaccinating and boostering older dogs or adult dogs is definitely not the way to go from my perspective. It is my opinion. We live in a free country with free speech, and this is what I like to share. And that's all. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. I'm relocating to Vancouver finally. I'll be in quarantine, so I'll have enough time to create this Facebook Live again next Thursday at the same time. Take care and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye. And thank you, Alicia. Thank you, Christina. Bye-bye.